Okay, so again, the first thing we'll work on here is kind of looking at the different tools inside of Illustrator to sort of kick off demo number 2. So if you look over on your toolbar over here on the left, there's a section that's bracketed off that starts with the pen tool at the top and ends on an eraser tool at the base of it. These are your basic drawing tools, at least the best that they could separate them out inside of Illustrator. The one that I want to start with today is looking at the most powerful tool in the interface is the pen tool. So the pen tool is kind of the classic looking ink tool, ink pen kind of head right there. If you see it, you can hit P to activate it also. But I'm going to click on it. And if you recall from our playing around last time, we did like a little outline of like the base of our computer screen with it. And we learned last time that the pen tool does not just draw, okay? You actually have to define points for the lines to be drawn between, okay? So it's not a click and drag tool, it's a click, let go, move your mouse, click, let go, move your mouse tool. So we're going to start off by just kind of creating kind of a generic sort of form out here. So I'm just going to make like a little square. So again, when you click to drop an anchor point, let off your mouse, move it so that it extends a line away from the point, and go all the way around till you seal the shape shut, okay? So go back to your original point after you make a little cube on screen. Now, once you got that drawn out, again, you can kind of see like the general design of it. Like it, again, there's our little anchor points represented by little squares. If you move your mouse over the top of the squares, they highlight and will either appear hollowed out white, little tiny hollowed out white squares, or if you notice, there's one little square probably in your area that shows that it's blue. That indicates that that square is actually selected independently from all the rest. Now, some other things to notice about this tool. Oh, yeah. What do you got? Yeah. If your square came shaded black, it means that you have a fill color or a stroke color turned on your top options bar. If you want to change that at any point, like mine's drawing, and I think it's just drawing generically here. If you want to change out the filler stroke for a current shape that you have on screen, switch to your arrow tool on the top of your toolbar, and then go back and click on the outline of your shape on screen. And then you should see appear up there your coloring options for fill and stroke. Got it? Sweet. Yeah, you probably want to turn off the fill color for now. Like, again, you can use the, from the swatch, it pops up the little strike through box. The very first one in the upper left corner of the swatch is what gives it no color for that attribute. So mine's assigned for no fill right now, and then I've got a black stroke that goes around my square. But yeah, you may find funny things happen when you're working in Illustrator. Like when you start drawing and nothing's there after you're done drawing it, right? That's because it's drawing without any color at all. The shape's there, it's just invisible until you give it an appearance attribute. So we got our square up, sweet. Now we're going to manipulate this with the other pen tools, so you can really see like the full power of the pen tool. So let's go back to the pen tool, and this time click and hold on the tool so you can see the other pen tools listed inside. Inside of it, you've got 3 others listed in here. One for adding anchor points, one for deleting anchor points, and one that is just the anchor point tool. So we'll look at them one by one here. Let's start with add. So the add anchor point. This tool is very specific in the sense that it allows you to add more anchor points to create more detail in a line form area. So when I turn it on, my pen suddenly has a little plus sign next to it by my mouse cursor. And if I overlap the tip of the pen along the path line of my stroke line somewhere, and then click, it will drop a brand new anchor point in that position along the path line. Now you have to make sure you click on the path. If you don't, it's not going to drop a line for you or an anchor automatically. You have to click directly on the path. So go all the way around your square and add like a few extra anchor points to it. So you can see that working visually. All right, got that? So now that we've added a few, let's go ahead and let's go back to our pen tool. And we can actually go in, if we added one we didn't want, we can use delete. So we'll use delete anchor point tool. And then I'm going to come back in over my square, and I'm going to go and just select some different anchor points to delete. So watch this. Whenever I delete a corner, notice what it does is it automatically draws a straight line to the next nearest anchor point when you remove one. So if I go all the way around and do that, I can quickly subtract the others, and it will just reconnect the lines to the next nearest anchor points. So this is a great tool. The minus is great for cleaning up design work when you got way too many points, or you've got like weird ones that are like unnecessary in your design and they're kind of confusing the look of it. Already, like, I could make like kind of a triangle right from my square just from like cutting off a single point from it. Really helpful for getting custom shapes. Now, that being said, there are other ways to work with this tool, the pen tool. There's one more in there. Let's go back over to our pen tools, and let's look at the one at the bottom that says Anchor Point Tool. Now, this one, when you bring it out towards your shape, you should notice that it looks like a little acute triangle, a little corner angle. And what this allows you to do is actually click on one of your anchor points and drag out what are called control handles. So go ahead and click over an anchor point and drag on it with your mouse. And you can actually invert the direction of it by pulling it, and you'll make like a crazy 8. But what it allows you to do is pull out these control handles that allow you to reshape the line connection at that anchor point so that you could round it off to kind of a smooth curvature. Or if you bring your mouse back directly over the anchor, it sharpens it up to a corner. So if I bring it all the way in and overlap my anchor, it just drops it back into a corner angle. So this is very helpful in sort of rounding off and making forms a little more organic. Now that's just a starter. When you drag these out, I can let them go. And then what's neat is you still have these anchor control handles sticking out of the point that you were working with. If you move your mouse over the tip of one of those control handles, you'll notice there's another little circle at the end. Click and drag on the end of that circle, and you can now manipulate one side of this arc that you've created out of the anchor point. So it makes it to where you can break the handle and create independent adjustments. Now there's some other neat things that the anchor point tool does. You may notice as you move it around along the edge of your path line that it shows, it'll convert into a black arrow or triangle with like a little rounded connection line below it. Watch what happens when you click in between anchor points along the line when that shows. So what I can do is I can literally just drag out that entire arc in an even fashion into my design area. Which is actually kind of cool. This is an updated feature. And you can even round off like flat lines. Like I left this one flat line on my design right here. And I can use this little rounded kind of tool to grab it and pull out an arc from that spot. So you can quickly make organic forms with this thing very, very fast. And that's just one way to work with it. Another tip to know about working with just the regular pen tool in here, when you're drawing with it, I know I told you it's just a click and move tool. The one part that a lot of people get hung up on when they first use it is that if they start clicking and dragging, it starts doing things like this, right? So if you ever click and drag while drawing with the regular pen tool, it draws an arc, okay? between those 2 points. So if I do that, they've also rigged Illustrator now to where if you make one arc, that the very next point you drag out is going to be an arc as well. And then you get a straight line after that. But you can keep dragging them out, making arcs as you go if you need arc-like forms in your design. Again, this is kind of helpful when you're making organic line work or overlapping like an image to make it look more illustrated in appearance. Very common, not unusual to see that happen today. So it's a wonderful tool to use. This is a tool that shows up in a lot of software programs that are out there generically, is this pen tool. We'll see it again in our 3D program and also in our video editing program we play with later down the line. This is, again, it's one of the most powerful tools that's in sort of creative software for generating imagery. All right. So that's kind of playing with the pen tool. Are there any questions on that tool before I hop past it? Okay, cool. One thing to know, like if you're drawing with it and you're like, I don't want to make a closed shape. You don't have to, by the way. You can leave what's called an open path on your screen. So if you just want to add dash lines to a drawing, you can do that. The way that you cancel the tool while you're drawing with it, you can do it 2 ways. You can either A, if you want to keep drawing and draw separate lines, hit return, and it will disengage that line and leave it alone, and then you can start drawing new lines. And that's just from hitting return. It'll stop and then you can keep drawing. Or if you're completely done with the tool while you're drawing with it, right? Like I'm out here drawing along. If you're done with it for a minute, you can just hit escape as well. Same concept. So escape or return do the same thing for this tool. It just stops it from drawing, essentially. All right. Now, if you've been drawing all this mess, we can go ahead and delete all of it. So what we're going to do to delete all this is just click and drag with our black selection tool at the top of our toolbar. And I'm just going to drag a big selection box over all this junk over here to grab it all. And notice that once you select it all, it should all become like blue highlighted lines with little anchor points. So it's just showing you everything in that selection box that's going to get moved, copied, deleted, whatever your plan is. Once you select it, then you can hit the delete key on the keyboard and it'll go away. And on my computer, it's taking a little bit longer than normal. Go figure, right?
Is that what that
Would you
little...
still need the grid?
Hmm?
Would you still need the grid?
Yeah, you want to be careful about like what you delete. Like, yeah, it can delete grid lines if you're not careful. For our case, like we're kind of done playing with the grid for now. It's not that big of a deal, but if you did delete a grid line that you wanted, then you can always drag new ones down from your ruler at the top. Because yeah, I got rid of a grid line. Whoops. So yeah, the selection tool will get rid of anything that you have inside that square. You can also individually select and delete things. So if I have a shape here, a shape here, a shape that crosses over my grid line, then instead of using the selection box to grab it all, I could click on an individual shape and hold down Command and then go and select any other shapes that I may need. Sorry, not Command, Shift. There we go. And then I can hit delete and get rid of those without harming my grid line up there at the top.
My son wasn't watching it.
Yeah, if you're getting the little watch symbol, you may want to click on your screen to see if it'll go away. Yeah, sometimes it just gets stuck visually on screen. Again, it's a processor thing, and it's also they've been playing with this new tool in Illustrator that sort of leverages all of the computer's graphic performance. So sometimes it works well, sometimes it looks a little glitchy. All right, so that's playing with the pen tool. They have another pen tool listed right below that. It's called the Freeform Curvature tool. It looks like the pen with like a little squiggly line. Works basically the same way, but it only draws rounded forms. So when I draw with this tool instead, watch what it does. So I'll get that little curvature tool, and It starts with a point that you define, and then you make your decision on where you want the next one. And you can just click once, and as you move the mouse, it's automatically curving that line for you. This is really helpful if you don't want to do like the click and drag method all along the way. But it will always curve every single line that you design with. And that's what the curvature tool does. Again, it does what it says it does. It draws curves. All right. Let's hop down and look at some of the other drawing tools. Skip down to the one that looks like a diagonal line. It looks like a line segment is what it's actually called. So let's activate that feature, the line segment tool. And go back over to your empty artboard. And what we're going to do, this is a click and drag tool as well. So you click and drag out individual lines on screen. So for any of you that need like straight line work for your design to create an illustration from, or you just need a straight line somewhere to underline something, this can be a fantastic tool for doing that. Again, you don't have to fumble around with the pen tool as much because this will do a straight line if you click and drag. If you click and drag with the pen, you get round lines, right? So this is a little faster for that.
How are you getting going that? Every time I let go and do another one, just the first one disappears.
What's happening is that you don't have a stroke color applied. So if you, yeah, this is one of those tools. Line segments work off of stroke line color only. If you have a fill color set and no stroke, then it's not going to show it. So if you need to fix that, it's pretty easy. Again, switch to your arrow tool, select one of the lines, and go up to the top menu bar and change your stroke color, okay? And then you'll be set to go. Yeah, always watch for that stuff. If you're drawing and nothing's appearing, it's because there's no color appearance being added. Now that's how the segment tool works. Now if you look underneath that tool, there are other drawing tools listed like arc, spiral, rectangle, and even one called the polar grid. Some of these are kind of classic, like old parametric line drawing styles for like the spiral, the rectangular grid, or the polar grid. The arc and the basic line segment come in the most handy though, of the two of them, or of the four of them. So line, like the little line curve, it allows you to draw like little arcs, little short arcs that you may want. Here's a cool thing that I want to show you guys. It's kind of hidden inside the software that you don't know about unless you've like played with shortcut keys long enough. But there's a way to actually make kind of sort of parametric designs with the line segment and shape drawing tools. So let me show you this. There's a key on your keyboard called the tilde key. It's up underneath escape. It looks like a little squiggly line. Hold that down. And make sure you have a line segment tool or a curve tool turned on. The arc, sorry. Hold down tilde. And then what I want you to do is click and drag your drawing tool on your artboard. Okay?
Oh wait, how do you do it again?
Yeah, so hold down the tilde key. That's that key underneath escape on your keyboard. So look for your escape key over on the upper left. And then look for the tilde as that little squiggle. Hold that down and then click and drag your mouse with your drawing tool and move around with it. And what it does is that it constrains the position of the initial drawing point, and then you can draw all around it in different directions. It's pretty cool. Now, you can get different effects though. Watch this. So that's just holding tilde. So if you hold tilde and the option key, you'll get another effect with it. You can go kind of spirograph crazy. And that's holding the tilde with the option key at the same time. Some people use these to draw, again, kind of parametric sort of designs and those types of things. So you get some very unique looking forms very quickly with it, and very abstract as well. But it looks like a spirograph drawing, if you're familiar with that toy. But you can do that with any of the stuff under line segment. Any of those tools would do that. I think if you also hold down tilde and is it shift? Yeah, shift, you can also do different things with it. Yeah, and it puts it in quads around the area. So that's kind of cool too. But you can get some pretty wild stuff if you play around with that enough.
How'd you do the last one?
The last one I held down tilde and shift at the same time, and then I drew around in my screen. Yeah. So then it'll separate your drawing into like 4 little quad areas around the point that you started at. Kind of makes almost like a mirroring effect. Yeah, so you can do that with anything under that line segment tool. The other cool thing is you can actually do it with all of the regular shape drawing tools that are the next line of tools we'll play with. So if you go down into your shapes, like your rectangle, it gets really wild when you start playing with those because they're whole shapes. And then switch it up. And then even switch it up even more. You get this really kind of bizarre patterning effect very quickly. A lot of fun though. This one, I just used the rectangle tool instead and used the same key commands. But you can get these with any of the parametric drawing tools, which are, again, your line segments and your shape drawing tools. Make that possible. So it's pretty unique and pretty cool. Again, you can use that to create interesting shapes, forms, work with different colors. All kinds of stuff. All right, so let's keep moving. Speaking of the shape tools, I do want to show you what they are under the main rectangle tool on your toolbar. So if you look under rectangle, you have a bunch of standard shapes that you can play with, like a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, an ellipse, a polygon, and a star tool. So one thing I want to show you that's unique about these. I'm going to open up the basic rectangle real quick and just draw a rectangle. Now, when you draw a basic rectangle with the rectangle tool, it gives you some different control features over the shape. If you'll notice, inside your rectangle there are these little circles at each corner point on the inside of the shape. I don't remember if I pointed these out last time, but you can click and drag on these little circles to round off all of the corners inside the design at one time, all the way down to where they connect to each other to almost make like a half sphere shape. So you can pull them as far in as they will connect, and then it'll stop and show you a red kind of outline to indicate it can't push any further without warping. Another cool thing you can do is if you hold down, I think it's Command, while you do that, you can just do one, no, not Command, my bad. Is it Shift? Which one is it? I feel like it's one of those. I thought it was. Well, maybe not. Bummer. Okay. It used to be you could click on one and then it would just drag the one corner in versus all 4 of them. Oh, I know why. It's because everything's selected. Okay, no big deal. So again, it's kind of a quick way to sort of manipulate your form, round it off if you need to for any reason at all. It beats trying to curve it off manually. Let me just kind of tell you that on the front end. That's what you used to have to do until about 2 versions of Illustrator back. So that's playing with, like, again, sort of the generic shape tools that you have. Any one of them have like those little control points usually, except maybe the star here. I noticed that one does not have them, and that's okay. But you do sometimes get options with them to adjust their outline form. All right, I'm going to skip the paintbrush tool. This is the paintbrush tool in Illustrator is great if you want kind of like painterly effects on screen. The problem is it doesn't create clean vector lines. It actually creates a mess on screen. And a lot of people make this mistake with this tool, and I'm telling you now so that you try to avoid it, please. Do not use the paintbrush to fill in color for shapes, okay? It is not here for that purpose. If you draw a shape on screen and it's not filled in with a color, you don't grab the brush and start painting freehand. Okay, that doesn't work because you start painting everywhere. If you want to change the color, the inside color of a shape, you just go up to the top and change its fill color instead. And that applies color perfectly and evenly inside the shape boundaries. The moment you start painting around with this crazy brush, it starts looking like this, like a freeform line everywhere you go. Okay? If you just want freeform lines, there's a better tool that I want to show you for that. So I'm going to delete the paintbrush here real quick in this shape. What I want to show you instead is the pencil tool right below the paintbrush. Yeah?
What if at some point your options just go away? Like all of your tools?
If your tool's on the top bar,
Yeah.
it means that you're probably editing or drawing with a tool right now. Like if I draw a star, sometimes that bar goes away. Or if I draw with the pen tool, that bar will definitely disappear. Does yours look like mine right now?
Wait, what do you mean?
Like the top options bar up here?
I don't really
Oh, you have nothing.
know.
Oh, well that's interesting. Do you have anything in your design right now? Here, I'll check real quick. Oh, you turned off everything. That's okay. Usually it's tab or F. Click on first. Click into Illustrator. Yeah. If you do this, I'll show you on my screen. If you hit tab on accident, everything goes away except your workspace. See that? So hit tab to bring it all back. You can also hit the F key, and it will do this. It will switch into full screen mode and start turning off all your tools. So be careful with certain keys you hit because they will kind of trip you up in the software. So tab and F are the two you want to watch for. All right. Let me get rid of some of these shapes again. Okay. So let's go down to the pencil tool. Okay, so that's right below the paintbrush tool. And the pencil is best for drawing kind of free-form sketch lines on screen. So this one you can actually click and drag around as much as you want in different directions, different shapes, to achieve kind of simple line art sketch lines. I recommend it for doing that because when you're done, you can always change the effect of the line after you finish sketching around with it. So you can draw in lines real quickly with the pencil tool like that, and it's just drawing stroke lines, okay? So if you don't have a stroke color set, you're not going to see these lines. What you may also find underneath the pencil tool, there's like 3 other tools listed underneath it. One of them is called the smoothing tool, which is kind of interesting. This actually allows you to smooth out any corner angles that you have in your drawing. So if you look on my screen, I drew like some triangles, and let's say like I didn't want those, I wanted smooth lines. Well, this tool allows you to kind of paint over those spaces, and you have to make sure you have the right line selected. So highlight the line you want to change with your black arrow tool, and then switch to your smoothing tool from underneath the pencil. And then kind of sketch over corners and places where you want the line to kind of arc. And the more you kind of draw in a perpendicular fashion away from those points or those corners, it will slowly start to round it off. It might even add anchor points into your line. Again, depending on the design of the graphic. All right. And then the other one there that's pretty obvious that tells you what it does is the path eraser. And this one's actually nice. Again, like if you've drawn a path line, you can use the path eraser to draw directly over sections of the line to erase them. So if you want to get rid of pieces of it to kind of change up the way your line art looks, this tool is awesome for that. Give it a little bit more of a sketchy looking appearance. And all it's doing is breaking your line, your pathways up into separate pathways. So it's just erasing part of the path and dropping in new anchor points is all it's doing. So pretty cool. All right, now the last one on the list down there in the drawing tools is the eraser. This one does exactly what it says. It erases. And again, it's a tool though that only works based on whatever you have selected and active on screen. If you do not have a drawn item selected on screen or a pathway, it won't actively work on that path. So if you see on my screen, no matter how much I try to erase this line that's not selected, nothing happens to it. So you have to switch to your selection tool and grab that line and then go to your eraser and make purposeful removals of the line shape. The eraser also works on other things like shapes. If you have a shape that you've drawn with the shape tools, you can use the eraser on it. Now, as you can see, it sort of lets you carve into the shape, which can be kind of fun. You can make negative space really quickly. So that you can see through the shape form. So that can be kind of fun to play around with. If you do enough drawing or cutting with it to where it actually separates part of your main shape out, then you can actually grab the individual pieces and move them around. So then you can kind of create like little echoed forms. Again, something else fun that you might be able to toy with depending on your design and your concept. Okay. Oh, I didn't show you this. I will show you this. Underneath the paintbrush, I was wondering where it was. There's one called Blob Brush. I do want to show you how this thing works. It's kind of fun. The Blob Brush, essentially what it does is it actually draws free-form shapes with paint sort of on screen. If you use the brush tool or the pencil, they draw stroke lines only. Like just a long, thin stroke line that has an appearance color attached to it. Appearance colors for strokes don't have dimension. They just look like they do. But they don't have outlines like a shape does. So with this tool, and again, you can use your open and close brackets to enlarge the tool if you need to. But with this tool, I can paint shapes on screen. Now, it doesn't look like much right now, but if I select it, it shows that there's a pathway outline that goes all around the perimeter of this painted area I just made. The other cool thing about the tool besides that is that I can paint over it with the same color, and it will add those shapes together. So if you paint over different shapes that carry the same appearance characteristics, like the same color, then it will combine them together. So if I draw a new star on my screen that's black, right, and then I draw a blob brush through that star that also uses the same black, those two shapes will automatically combine together to make a new form. So then you have one unified surface to play with. That's great if you want to have like something carry the same color tones or appearance options rather than them all being kind of separated. So it can be really helpful, kind of fun to toy with.
How do you combine it together? Because mine is individual.
Yeah, so when you're doing it, you have to first have like a shape out on the screen, and then you paint and connect to it with the blob brush. So you can't draw a shape and then, or you can't draw with the blob brush and then draw a shape. It doesn't work that way. The blob brush has to interact with the shape that's already there. So that's how you can play around with that tool. All right. A couple other things that I want to show you before we move on from this part is also how to kind of fine-tune things like your stroke line appearance, playing around with the outline appearance of it, and changing that up. So let's find, like, if you don't have a stroke line in the screen, and mine's kind of congested, so I'm just going to start fresh and delete all this junk. And I'm just going to draw with the arc tool and just have a simple arc out here for starters. All right. Now I'm going to switch back to my black arrow tool as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the panel for stroke to be able to manipulate the appearance of this. So over here on your panels over on the right, there should be one called stroke. Mine's next to one called gradient. And if you click on stroke, if it looks like it's minimalized on your screen, there's a little up and down arrow next to the title stroke, and click on it once or twice to fully expand the stroke panel. Again, it's just this tiny little up and down arrow next to the title of the panel stroke. If you click on it several times, it will minimalize or maximize that panel. So you should see it in full like mine if you got it right. All right, so this is the stroke panel. And there's quite a few things that we can play with on here. The first one up is obviously changing the weight of the line. Weight really just means thickness in technical terms. So let's amp up the thickness of the line here so we can see it more clearly. I'm boosting mine up to like a good 40-point thickness. And so now I can see my curvature really well. I can see how the appearance of the stroke effect is happening. Again, if you notice with the stroke effect, it doesn't outline the edges of the effect. Notice how the interior of the line is showing through the center only. There's no perimeter outline that goes around that black line you just made. So it's an appearance is what it is. Now underneath the panel, we have some options we can toy with. Like instead of having like flat ends on the end of our stroke lines, we can change them to different caps. So you can change the shape of the cap to rounded if you want like a round line on either end or a rounded cap line, or you can make it into another square that's extended out further away from the anchor point. So that's kind of fun to play with and know that you can manipulate that if you ever need to, depending on your design needs. There are other options that are listed in here, like you can change the appearance of a corner if you have three or more anchor points on screen. You can change if it's a rounded corner versus an angled corner. And then you have a couple other options if you come further down. There's one in here called dash line. This is actually a fun effect if you check that box for dash line. Dash line was an effect created for designers, again, for creating outlines or cutting lines or implied cutting areas for a design. So right now, if you see mine, like it says it's 12 point, but the thickness of the line is 40 points. So they look like these really long, it looks like a long zipper line right now. But let's say we change it up and we go ahead and change up the size of those dash lines. So see where it says 12 point in the first little dash box below? You can change that number to be a different line width. So let's put it at like 20 points, and then hit return after you type that number in. And notice how the thickness of those lines just changed. If I amp it up, I can keep going, like that's 40 point. So it's making squares. If I go up to 60, they start getting longer and thinner. And go to 80 and they start getting longer and thinner. Now this is all based on the line weight that you're working with for your stroke. So if you thin out the weight line, you can actually get thin cut lines. And a lot of people use this when playing around again with the stroke tool. So again, you can do different combinations of the weight and the dash. You can even add your own custom dash line distances down below by inserting more numbers into the other dash and gap boxes. So you could have one line that's 12 point, another line that's 20 point, so every other line looks like a long and a thin, a long and a thin.
How would you change the color?
If you want to change the color of the stroke, that's something that you do up above in your stroke color box.
But like, okay.
It works.
Playing around with the arrows, right? So put the arrow in there.
Oh, if you drop the arrows on, that's completely different. Those have automatic colors associated with them. So you have to work a lot harder to change like arrow colors. It's called it's actually considered what's called like a symbol. So it's a little more complex in the system. But yeah, if you go down past dash, then you have this other thing down here called arrowheads. So you can actually add like endpoint arrow shapes to the end of your stroke lines. And they have lots of different things in here. They even have scissors, right? So you can actually indicate an actual cut line with a scissor icon. And these can be pretty fun. And some of them are kind of hokey and weird. But again, it all depends on the design needs. These are sort of standard, typical for using. Again, they're directional tools is what they are at the end of the day. Directional design elements. So you can add tail to the option. You can add a head to it so you actually make an arrow, right? So I added a tail and I added a head so it looks like an arrow on my screen. There's other things I can change like the scale for the arrowheads. I can also change this option at the bottom that says profile. If you look at the bottom, there's a little drop down that says profile. This one actually allows you to change the quality of how the line form appears all the way along the stroke line. So I can give it like a bulge halfway through it that it applies. Let me turn off these silly arrowheads for a second. They're cool up to a point. And I'm going to turn off my dash line so you can see the effect of the profile. So with profile on, you can actually give your line more expression, a little bit more of a natural appearance than just being a plain flat line. And that's just using the profiles down below. Now, the profile won't be terribly obvious on a stroke line if you have lots of different effects applied to it, like those arrowheads or the dash lines. It becomes very subtle. But it becomes very obvious the thicker your line is. And you can make very, again, kind of simple, unique stroke effects quickly. We'll look at another tool to where you can actually make custom ones yourself inside your design so that you're not kind of limited to just these standard ones if you don't want to be. But that's the stroke panel. Very powerful panel to play with. Very important for controlling the qualities of your stroke lines. All right, let's go ahead and we'll take a break on that point, and then we'll get back and we'll look at the other tools inside the interface.